Revit has an entity known as a filled region that's used to represent some type of material. Back in the old days when we were drawing with a pencil, it would have been considered a pochette pattern. In more of an AutoCAD environment, this would be considered a hatch pattern. But in Revit, it's called a filled region. Now let's take a look at how to draw a filled region in. We're going to draw in some gravel or some stone underneath this floor down here at the bottom of our view. Zoom in to this area here directly underneath the garage floor. And we're going to fill this area in with a stone or a gravel pattern. Come underneath the Annotate tab and click the Region command. When you do that, it brings up the Filled Region tool. We can see that currently it says Filled Region Diagonal Crosshatch. If you click there, take a look here on the list, select on Gravel. Unfortunately, there's no way that we can click right inside of this space and have it automatically fill with gravel. So what we need to do, come up here, select on Rectangle, pick about where you'd like to have that gravel start, and then draw in the area where it should be. And then clicking again, when you're done, come up here to the big green check mark and click it. Then finally, click out into space. And now you're going to see that gravel pattern showing up here underneath where our floor is located at. So a hatch pattern, or in this case it's called a fill pattern, is used to fill in an area with a material indication, so when it comes time to detail it out, we'll be able to tell that's gravel there, and we'll have something to point to if we wanted to place a piece of text there that said, right here is where gravel is going to be. A detail component is a two-dimensional entity that can be inserted into a Revit project to look like its three-dimensional counterpart. In this exercise, what we're going to do is we're going to place a 2x6 down here at the bottom of our wall, and it's going to be supporting this main wall going on up to our roof. How this is going to work, underneath the Annotate tab on the ribbon, move over and then click on the little arrow next to the word component. Make sure that Detail Component is highlighted. We will ultimately be using a repeating detail component as well, but for this instance, just select on Detail Component. Once you do that, take a look underneath Properties over here on the side. When you do, you'll notice that the only ones that are currently loaded into this project, and you can see that by clicking on the picture, is brick, as well as this W-wide flange section, which is a steel beam size. We don't want to load those into our current project. We want to draw in a 2x6. So to do that, we need to come up on the ribbon and select on Load Family. Double-click on the little folder next to Detail Items. Each one of these is a different division with its own set of detail components inside of it. There are hundreds of different detail components that we can choose from. In this case, we want to do 2x6s, which are made out of wood, so we'll open up the folder for Division 6, Wood and Plastic. 061100, wood framing's next. And now we're going to choose Nominal Cut Lumber Section because this is a section view. And nominal cut lumber, that's the kind of boards that you would buy and be actually building with out at your job site. So select on Nominal Cut Lumber Section and click on Open. When you do that, you'll have a choice of different wood sizes here on the list. In this case, click where you see 2x6 listed, and it's going to drop in a 2x6 board into our project. And that board will be 5.5 inches by 1.5 inches in size. That's the size of that board after it went through the milling process. Click on OK. There's the board. If we hit the space bar before even clicking to place it, we'll be able to rotate this around. Once it's rotated into this rough position, click right in this location. We now have the sill plate down at the bottom of our wall, and that's going to be supporting the 2x6s up above. Move up and then click right about here. What this board is going to do is it's going to support the roof up above. Place another one directly underneath it like so, and just click, and then hit Escape a couple of times to get out of the command. Now we can see that we have two boards up at the top of our wall supporting the roof, as well as a board down here at the bottom. That's our sill plate that ultimately is going to help connect this wall to the foundation down below. Now the next thing I'd like to do is start to add some brick. To do that, we could come up here to Components, select on Brick, and then start clicking individually, one brick at a time. Or in this case, what we're actually looking at here is the bottom of the wall, and this is made out of CMU block. And click one CMU block spot at a time. In this case, though, I just want to pick one of the bricks off of the list, and instead of clicking each spot where a brick should be, we're going to use a repeating detail component instead. So choose repeating detail and brick, move down here and click in this location. Now move straight up. When you do, you're going to see this brick is going to follow wherever your cursor goes on the screen. If you hit the spacebar, it'll flip the brick over to the other side. Once you see the brick coming up to this location here, click to finish the placement. Now we can see the individual brick coursing coming up the wall. We could start that again by clicking here and then clicking to place more brick in. So by using the repeating detail component, it will repeat that same detail component again and again and again over the length that you choose. So detail components allow you to place individual pre-drawn objects in to help you with both accuracy as well as the speed of drawing in such things as your wall sections. Repeating detail components do the same thing. In fact, they place in a detail component just like these, except it repeats that detail component again and again and again along the path of your choosing. Detail lines in Revit are two-dimensional line work or symbology, such as a line, an arc, a circle, or an ellipse. And we can draw these in any two-dimensional or flat view. Examples of those would be floor plane views, ceiling plane views, or drafting views. Where we cannot draw them are in all those different 3D views, such as a camera view, or by just clicking on the little house up at the top of the screen and going into a 3D view. Detail lines can be drawn inside of two-dimensional views. That being said, I'm going to make sure that I'm inside of a drafting view now, find my drafting views here at the side, and then double-click on detail lines just to make sure that that's the view that's activated. From here, I have a nice big blank drawing area. This is a drafting view. Go in here to my Annotate tab, and then here's the command for detail lines. By selecting on detail line, we'll see over toward the right-hand side, there's a variety of different shapes that we can execute, such as line, rectangle, polygon, circle, arc, and ellipse. In this case, we'll start off by picking on the line tool, and then moving the cursor down and just picking somewhere here in the drawing area. Move over to the right, and then left-click somewhere over in this direction. The exact length for any of these lines I'm getting ready to draw doesn't really matter, so I'm just going to click here. You'll see that we now have a line on the screen. In fact, if I start to draw down like this and then click again, we'll start to draw in one line immediately after another line. And to get out of this, I can just hit Escape on the keyboard twice, and now I'm out of the command. If I go through the same process, Annotate, Detail Line, select on the Line tool, and in this case, there's a box here that says Chain, the little check mark next to it. I'm going to clear the box that has Chain. I'm going to click once, and then click again, and we'll notice that it's not automatically drawing another line. We're still in the Line command, but what this does is it allows us to click and click, then click and click. So it's draw a line, draw a line, draw a line, instead of drawing one line after another line. Usually, though, I like to have chain check marks, so I'll go ahead and check this again. And by doing that, you can see if I start to draw again, it draws one line immediately after another line. To escape a couple times to get out of the command, I'm just going to select on Detail Line one more time, and I'm going to pick Rectangle now. If you click once and click again, you can draw a rectangle. Polygon works the same way. One thing to know, though, if you're using a polygon, on the options bar going across the top, there's an option here that says Sides. This controls how many sides there are going to be on the polygon. So if I change this from being a 6 to an 8, and then click inside of the drawing area, as I move this from side to side, we can now see that it's creating a polygon or an octagon. And if we click, it'll place it. Circle works the same way. Click, come out, and then click again. There's a couple different arcs that you can do. In this case, going to click a couple of times and place an arc. And then there's also ellipse. And that's a matter of clicking 3 times, one for the center, one for one of the outside edges, and yet again for another one of the other edges in order to create that ellipse shape. Now, if we want to be very specific in our links, which we probably do, what we can do is come up here, select on the Line tool, click once, and then move in the direction we'd like to draw the line. When we do this, we'll see a dimension show up. Whenever this temporary dimension shows up, we can type in a number such as 7. Revit automatically assumes feet, so this is going to be a 7-foot long line. So there's a line that's 7 feet long. If I move down here and type in 1 foot 6, we'll have a line that's 1 foot 6 inches long. And now I'm going to hit escape a couple times on the keyboard to get out of the command. Now, the final thing that I wanted to show related to the detail lines is by executing on that, we can then move over here to line styles. And then there's an option here that says thin lines, medium lines, or wide lines. If we choose one of the different line thicknesses, and now I'm going to zoom in a little bit to see if we can begin to see the difference in thickness. Notice how this line is thicker than this line. Now I'll do the same thing, except I'll choose a wide line off of the list. And I just hit escape once to partially get out of the command, and then change this to be hidden. And now click, click again. Now if I zoom in, we can see it's now a hidden line. To draw in different kinds of line work, circles, rectangles, all those different shapes, you need to come underneath the Annotate tab, be inside of a flat or two-dimensional type of view, select on Detail Line, pick which shape that you want, then here where it has Line Style, pick the line style with the appropriate line weight, as well as line type, and then start drawing in your different lines. A drafting view in Revit is used to draw two-dimensional details inside of the three-dimensional Revit environment. Traditionally, a Revit model is a three-dimensional view, but a drafting view is not. It's actually a two-dimensional view, and it looks like a blank sheet of paper that you draw on top of. To create one of these views, you need to move underneath the View tab on the ribbon, come over, and select Drafting View. When you do this, it'll ask, what do you want to name the drafting view? And in this case, I'm going to call it Example Drafting View. I could pick a different scale if I wanted to. In this case, it's 1.5 inches equals a foot. I kind of like that scale, so I'll leave it as it is. But I will point out that if I select on it, you'll get a drop-down list with all those different scales, as well as the word custom, which means you can create your own custom scale for this drafting view, or you could consider it a drafting detail. I like it at this scale, so I'm just going to click somewhere out here, and then select on the word OK. And this opens up or creates that new blank drafting view. And once again, this is just like a blank white sheet of paper. So because of that, it means we can come underneath the Annotate tab and then either use our dimensioning tools, our detail lines, our regions, as well as our detail components to draw different kinds of details here inside of the drafting view. In this instance, just to show how you can draw inside of it, I'm going to select on Detail Lines underneath Annotate. I'm going to select on the Line tool, and then I'm going to draw a line in, hit Escape a couple of times, Detail Line again, pick on the Circle command, draw in a circle. I hit Escape once on the keyboard, select on the Arc command, and then draw in an arc, and hit Escape a couple times on the keyboard. The point of this is that you can do two-dimensional drawing inside of the Revit environment by creating these drafting views. Another use for the drafting view is if you have pre-drawn AutoCAD details. Maybe you've been using your other CAD software packages such as AutoCAD for years and you have your own library of symbology and details and that kind of information. Well, you can bring those into a drafting view, and then from a drafting view, those can get inserted in onto your different construction document sets. Another way that you can create these drafting views is by using what's called a callout. And to do that, underneath the project browser, I'd like to move to this full building section and double click underneath the word sections, full building section. This brings up one of the exterior elevations of the building. It's actually a section going through the building. And what I'd like to do is create a callout view right in this area. You would typically use this if we wanted to detail out the way the construction was in this particular spot. And to do that, we can come underneath the View tab and select on the word Callout. Next, don't click again until you put a check mark in Reference Other View. What this allows us to do is we can pick maybe one of those drafting views that we already created. If we had brought in an AutoCAD detail into the drafting view, we can then select that drafting view with the AutoCAD detail and create that link between the callout and that drafting view. In this case, though, I'd just like to create a new drafting view. Next, I'm going to click once here, and then click again. It's now created a new drafting view, and we can see that as well underneath the project browser, and it's called Callout a Full Building Section. If we wanted to give this a different name, we could. It would just be a matter of right-clicking on this and then going to rename. In this case, though, I'm not going to actually rename it, but it's always good practice once you've created a condition like this to right-click on it, go to rename, and give it a name that everyone will be able to recognize. Now, because we do have this view, and I just clicked out into space to get out of that, if I double-click here where it has callout to the full building section, instead of what a callout usually does, which is create an enlarged detail of this view, we just told it to create a new drafting view, which means it's now created a new drafting view, a blank sheet of paper, where we can draw in the way that that particular part of the building should be detailed out. So drafting views are two-dimensional drawing areas like a blank sheet of paper where you can either insert in outside CAD information or use your different annotation tools to draw in a variety of different details that otherwise you wouldn't need to model inside of a Revit environment. Revit allows for the automation of the revision process, and this is done by placing revision clouds either inside of a view or on the sheet itself. Then, after placing that revision cloud, your title block will fill in appropriately with the correct revision information. Move your cursor over to the Annotate tab, then select on Revision Cloud. When you do, make sure that over toward the right-hand side that you have rectangle selected. Move the cursor down, then over toward the left-hand side of the sheet, click once, then click a second time to draw a revision cloud window around the bottom half of this detail. If we now look at our properties, we can see that this revision is revision 1. In fact, it has the number revision 1 right underneath it here in properties. And the date that will show up in the revision is called date 1. And in just a moment, I'll show you where that information can be updated and changed. Move your cursor up and select on the big green check mark. We now have that revision cloud in place. And now if we look on our title block, we can see that the revision is now inside of the title block. To modify this information, come up to the Manage tab and select on Additional Settings. Then pick Sheet Issues Revisions. This is where all that information related to the revisions is located at. Currently, it's numeric as opposed to alphabetic. The date is called Date 1, and revision is Revision 1. If we needed to change this to alphabetic instead, we could by clicking where it has numeric, then selecting alphabetic off of the list. The date 1 and revision 1, if we wanted to put in today's date, as well as some sort of revision information, we could do that here. We will talk about the rest of this just a little bit later. But another thing I would like to do is add yet another revision to this information. To add a new revision, just come up and select on the big Add button in the upper right-hand corner. This will add revision 2. This can also be either alphabetic or numeric, and can have its own information associated with it. Come down to OK. You will notice that even though we've added a second revision, it does not show up here inside of the title block. The reason is that that revision information is associated with the revision cloud. Since there are no revision clouds, either inside of a view that would be on the sheet or on the sheet itself, there's no revision information showing up inside of the title block. Let's place another revision cloud so that we can now see revision B show up here inside of the title block. I just zoomed out by spinning the wheel on the mouse, come up here to Annotate, then from the Annotate tab, click on Revision Cloud. Under Properties, where it says Revision, change this to Sequence 2, Revision 2. You will notice that the revision number will now be a B, and the revision date is called Date 2 because that's the piece of information that we had in that dialog box. Draw a little window around here that will be our revision cloud just by clicking once, then clicking again. And let's also have a second revision, but this time let's use one of our other drawing tools. And I don't care if it's the circle or the polygon or which one that you use, but in this case I will be using the line tool. and I will manually draw in the shape that I want this to be, then click on the big green check mark. By doing this, both of these are associated with revision 2. If we look in the title block, we can see that revision 2 is now there in the title block, and this is the letter B. Come up to the Manage tab, select on Additional Settings, then go to your Sheet Issues and Revisions to see its properties. A couple of other properties that are available here underneath Sheet Issues and Revisions include Issued and Show. Issued means that if issued is checkmarked, no other revisions can then be used that are revision number 1, because this has already been issued. Where it says Show, Cloud and Tag, make this be None. This means that the cloud and then the tag that we would eventually put in would not show up. Move down here to OK. Zoom out. And you will notice that revision 1 no longer shows up because in that previous dialog box, we told it not to show up. If we need to tag our revision clouds, we can do that as well. Just come over to the Annotate tab, Tag by Category, click the revision cloud, and by doing that, we can now see that this is revision B, which of course corresponds with the information that we have over here. If we go back to the Manage tab, once again come down here to Additional Settings, Sheet Issues and Revisions, we can see that Cloud and Tag is the option, and that's the reason why we can still see it. It's still turned on. If we decide to only show the tag and not the cloud, we could then click on OK one more time, and now we can see down here that all that's left is the tag. And if we need to turn that leader off, because right now it's not pointing at anything, make sure to select on the tag, come up to leader, and now you will see that that leader goes away, the leader that had been pointing to the original revision cloud.